Good evening, folks, and welcome to the Horror Corner. I'm your host, Sean Patrick Erschen. This week we are doing another tag video. This is the favorite of the decade horror tag, and this was created by Random Horror, my buddy Ross there. And he came up with a really cool idea of picking your favorite horror film from each decade, going all the way back to the 1920s, which is pretty much where horror started. So let's get to it, shall we? And we're just starting off with the 1920s. And I'm going to actually agree with Ross on this one. Nosferatu, directed by F.W. Murnau, starring Max Schreck in the role of Count Orlok, which is obviously based off of the Bram Stoker's Dracula novel, but they didn't have the rights to call it that or use that name. But when you watch the movie, it's obviously based on that story. But it's such an awesome movie, even though it's a silent film. It's still so creepy and disturbing, you know. And what a great job by Max Schreck in the role of Count Orlok. I love that character. It's iconic. Just awesome. 1930s, so that's a tough one. I am going to have to go with Dracula from 1931, the Universal Monsters classic starring the legendary Bela Lugosi in the role of Count Dracula. Such an iconic portrayal of the character that just has withstood the test of time, you know. It's an amazing movie, and it's got a great creepy gothic atmosphere. Even though there's no music in the film, it's still very creepy. In the 1940s, I'm going to have to go with another Universal Monster classic, The Wolfman. And I absolutely love Lon Chaney Jr.'s portrayal of Lawrence Talbot. Such a tragic character, and he just pulls it off so well, and you're with him every step of the way. And I love the makeup effects. I think they do hold up pretty well today. I think it looks awesome, honestly. The 1950s, I'm going to have to go with the Hammer horror classic. Now, this is when Hammer came into play, and I am going to go with the horror of Dracula. That's right, another Dracula film with another awesome portrayal of Count Dracula by the awesome Christopher Lee, who's incredibly menacing in the role. Amazing portrayal of the character. And you've got the best to ever play the character of Van Helsing, and that to me is Peter Cushing. So an amazing cast with amazing score, amazing direction, amazing gothic atmosphere. I love Hammer horror, you guys know that, and this is the absolute quintessential Hammer horror film, The Horror of Dracula, from 1958. So the 1960s, that's a tough one too. Man, you had Psycho in there. Oh, a lot of good ones. I'm going to have to go with Rosemary's Baby from 1968. I just think that's an incredible movie. It's an incredible slow burn. It's probably the best example ever of a slow burn psychological horror film. And you're with Mia Farrow's character every step of the way. A brilliant performance in the role of Rosemary. And you're just wondering, you're guessing the whole time, you know, is this all in her head? You know, is this just some emotional outburst because she's pregnant? Or is this weird stuff really happening with this witch cult thing, you know? And it keeps you guessing all the way to the end, and that's one of the most awesome classic endings in horror history. 1970s for me, even though it's an amazing decade for horror, so many horror classics were made in the 70s. You had Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you had Last House on the Left, you had The Hills Have Eyes, you had all these vampire classics like the Gene Rollins stuff and the Jess Franco stuff. You had Hammer was still going strong, and but I'm going to have to go with the classic Halloween, 1978. Would you think I would pick anything else? I mean, come on, if you guys know me at all, you know I am a huge Halloween fan. What more needs to be said about the masterpiece Halloween from John Carpenter? I think I've said enough about it. So 1980s is a really, really tough one. I mean, to me, that's like the best decade for horror ever. There was so many awesome horror movies made in the 80s. From every subgenre, you know. Just an amazing time for horror. But I'm going to have to go with the classic from 1980. So they started the decade with a bang with The Shining, as directed by Stanley Kubrick. Just an absolute masterpiece. And that's my favorite movie by Stanley Kubrick, and that's saying a lot because he's directed some real classics. But this was just the perfect horror movie for me. Just an amazing feeling of claustrophobia, that closed-in feeling, even though you're in a huge hotel, you know, the Overlook Hotel. And of course, you had the brilliant performances of Jack Nicholson, just iconic, and Shelley Duvall was absolutely fantastic. Just a brilliant movie. The 90s, it's pretty much a no-brainer on that one. It has to be Scream. It just has to be. Totally reinvigorated the horror genre, and certainly the slasher genre from the dead. I mean, and you had an iconic character in Ghostface, a great new slasher killer. You had an amazing cast. You had that awesome opening scene with Drew Barrymore. You got Courtney Cox, David Arquette, Neve Campbell, one of the great final girls of all time. Just an amazing film. The 2000s, alright, we're getting down to it now. So I am going to pick it, believe it or not, Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon. I absolutely love that movie. To me, it's like just a forgotten classic, you know, an absolute gem, you know, that just doesn't get enough love. It's incredibly underrated. It's criminal. It's just so funny. It's such a brilliant concept. It's a great slasher movie. It's got great comedy. It's a great parody of the slasher genre. And you got Robert Englund in there, who does an awesome job. You got the lady from Poltergeist. It's such an awesome movie. You got a great slasher killer in Leslie Vernon. A really cool look and a creepy mask he had, you know. Awesome. I love that movie. The 2010s. Now, horror has had quite a resurgence in the 2010s. A lot of good ones. But my favorite, and I think is the best horror movie so far, and the decade is almost over, A Quiet Place. I just thought that was absolutely excellent. I think it was a 5-star classic. Yeah, it's a modern classic to me, you know. I love it. When you get that kind of caliber of acting, like John Krasinski's character and Emily Blunt, just excellent Oscar-worthy acting. An amazing cast in general. Everybody in that movie is awesome. And then you have that awesome direction, too. You got these situations like that Emily Blunt's character is put in when she's pregnant, and you got these monsters running around, and oh my god, it's terrifying. It really keeps you on the edge of your seat, you know, and you're like gasping. So that's the mark of a great horror movie right there, that keeps you on the edge of your seat. The intensity of it. So that's it, guys. That's it for the favorite of the decade horror tag. So now I'm going to tag some people. I'm going to tag Bronco Juggalo Talks Movies. I'm going to tag Boogeyman Ben, Horror Fan 34, Chuckydoll, Dave Maggot, and SyFy Horror Guys. So guys, answer the call and do the favorite of the decade horror tag. And thank you for joining me, Sean Patrick Erschen, in the Horror Corner. Tune in and stay scared.